The question is that Israel, Cyprus, and Greece are about to have a joint, they already started, natural gas project using the huge Israeli natural gas reserves that will go via Cyprus and Greece to Europe. Turkey claims that it violates the rights of its unrecognized territory of North Turkey, of North Cyprus, that has become, as you know, Turkish occupied territory. When you look at what happened since the Israeli recognition of Somaliland, right? One very significant Arab country did not join the condemnations. It's called the UAE. UAE and Saudi Arabia are in deep crisis today over the situation in South Yemen. Prime Minister Netanyahu made it very clear what is the common problem, or who are the common problem. Everybody knows Turkey.
Both these countries are former imperial powers. The Persian Empire and the Ottoman Empire dominated that region.
Erdogan is not necessarily the most predictable leader as well. What will be the reaction in Iran to the growing protests in the streets?
Welcome to F4 Talks. With me is our dear friend Josef Olmert yet again. As some of you who follow us closely know, he is one of the towering Israeli minds of our times. He comes obviously from an eminent political family, but more importantly, he's an independent thinker. He is punchy, he is honest, and he's jolly good fun. So today we are going to discuss Somaliland. Joseph, why has Israel recognized Somaliland, officially recognized Somaliland? What's going on?
I'm going to do something that you would not like me to do. Just finish this interview in 3 minutes or in 1 minute maybe, because I'll tell you, the answer is very simple. Look at the map.
Exactly.
Look at the map. Look. But it is, of course, a much more profound.
Very quickly, explain to our viewers who have not looked at the map. I am indeed looking at the map as we speak, but explain to them where is Somaliland?
Somaliland basically controls the Straits of Hormuz and shortens the range to Iran. And of course to Yemen, which has become a problem for Israel with the Houthis. And
so very quickly, on the east, just below the Arabian Peninsula, the African continent juts out like a rhino horn.
And
that horn on the north is Somaliland. Somaliland used to be, or as far as Somalia is concerned, still a part of Somalia. Somalia claims it as its territory, and Somaliland declared independence a while ago. Joseph is going to give us the history in detail, and many states take this view that Somalia's territorial integrity has to be maintained, the principle of state sovereignty, and other states believe that the principle of self-determination should hold, and Somaliland needs to be its own independent state. Over to you, Joseph.
Well, let me first of all emphasize again the geographic element or the geopolitical element. It's also close to Ethiopia. And I don't know if everybody realizes how significant Ethiopia has become and is in overall African politics, with a population of almost 125 to 130 million people, and by all predictions will be one of the 10 most populated states in the world of 2070 or 2080, or maybe even beforehand, alongside, by the way, Nigeria from Africa, and of course, other countries. But then I was also about to say that there is a Turkish element in it. And I know that everybody would be surprised to hear, what are you talking about Turkey here? And I'll tell you. And that makes more sense when you look at that also. Turkey discovered huge oil reserves off the shores of Somalia that are estimated to have 30 to 40 billion barrels of oil. And they say that as of 2026, they are about to start the drilling, which as of now, I haven't seen any real operation preparatory to this, but that's what they say now. At the same time, Turkey threatens Israel with all kinds of threats, up to the point where recently it is becoming formal now. There is a new strategic alliance in the Mediterranean, including Israel, Cyprus, and Greece. And in order to prevent any misunderstanding about why there is this alliance, when the leaders of Greece and Cyprus were in Jerusalem a few days ago, Prime Minister Netanyahu made it very clear what is the common problem, or who are the common problem. Everybody knows Turkey. Now, the problem now connected to oil. Let's see. The question is that Israel, Cyprus, and Greece are about to have a joint, they already started, natural gas project using the huge Israeli natural gas reserves that will go via Cyprus and Greece to Europe. Turkey claims that it violates the rights of its unrecognized territory of North Turkey, of North Cyprus, that has become, as you know, Turkish occupied territory, supposedly independent state. And they're threatening all kinds of threats about the joint ventures by Israel, Greece, and Cyprus to produce this natural gas and pass it on. So now there may be mutual deterrence. Israel in Somaliland over Turkish oil explorations of Somalia, Turkey over Israel, Cyprus, and Greece. And if there is mutual deterrence, it means that each side can do whatever they want to do. So here is the Turkish element of it. But I'll go beyond it. I'll put it in a bigger context now. One can look at something very interesting happening in Israeli foreign policy that may be the result, or one of the results, of what happened on the 7th of October and afterwards. The idea that Israel should connect itself into some kind of alliances. So one alliance we already talked about, Israel, Cyprus, Greece. There is also the growing, very strong strategic military relationships with India. There is a change also in the Arab Peninsula. When you look at what happened since the Israeli recognition of Somaliland, right? One very significant Arab country did not join the condemnations. It's called the UAE. The UAE has already, for all intents and purposes, did recognize the existence of Somaliland before by doing business with them and all kinds of cooperations. Today, as we talk, Atul, in honor of your program, in recognition of your natural international recognition, UAE and Saudi Arabia are in deep crisis today over the situation in South Yemen, which also
I was just reading about it before I came on to speak
which
with you. I was
also
going
is
to
about
raise this.
yeah, which may be about to declare its independence, and UAE supports it. The Saudis do not. So when you look at all that, you see why the Israeli recognition of Somaliland is something that is much bigger than just Israel recognizing Somaliland. Now, Somaliland is a successful venture as opposed to the failing state called Somalia. Okay, it has about 1/3 of the population of Somalia, 6 to 18 million, but it's a huge territory, a very big territory. It has a democratic system, peaceful transfer of powers after elections. And yes, it has the issues that you have in Somalia. I mean, the clannish, the tribal, the ethnic division between some big clans. But the fact of the matter is that it has existed like that from 1991, almost 35 years, if I'm not wrong. And it is therefore, in many respects, a more sustainable political entity than Somalia is. So when you look at all that, you can understand that the Israeli action has geopolitical sense. But I'll go even beyond that. I'll give you another layer to the overall context. I already wrote about that over 10 years ago. That what has really changed in the Middle East, even before the Abraham Accords, and of course before 7th of October, Israel is that Israel has become an actor within the systems of Middle East politics. Not the odd man out that is boycotted by everybody, not the bogeyman out, but the bogeyman in. And when you look at the recognition of Somaliland, you see exactly that. Some Arab countries, some Muslim countries, quietly, peacefully accept it. And they look at Israel as an ally, as opposed to others. So Israel has become part of the system in some ways. It's a very interesting situation here. And again, just to finish all this, the immediate reaction of the president of Somaliland is we are joining the Abraham Accords, or at least we want to join them. So it shows to you that there is a strategic geopolitical context which makes sense. And the last question, because you asked about why now, there are again two reasons. One of them is domestic Israeli. And let me offer you a suggestion here. Netanyahu is under pressure, we know that. Under tremendous pressure, huge pressure. That, by the way, was slightly alleviated yesterday with what seems to be the successful talk with Trump, at least the way it was presented outside the White House before and after the talk. Now, what Netanyahu has done by this recognition is he proved again to the Israeli public that he is creating the agenda. He is the one who creates the agenda for the political discourse in Israel. Whereas the opposition to Netanyahu, what they say, or almost everything they say, is only one thing: no Netanyahu, no Netanyahu, no Netanyahu. Netanyahu comes up and says, look, I've done this, I've done that. Judge me by what I'm doing. And now the entire Israeli press are on planes to Somaliland to visit the country, to see what they are, who they are, why they are. And all they will hear in Somaliland is Netanyahu is a great leader, Netanyahu is a statesman, we are so happy, we are this, we are that. So this is a domestic consideration. That's politicians, as you know, always have domestic agendas, but it's obvious. The other reason is that, look, it's one of the lessons of what happened after 7th of October, that Israel should move away from what seemed to be the containment passivity that, by the way, Netanyahu orchestrated. And for that, he has to pay the price, to a much more active position now in the overall regional affairs. And as I said before, Israel is becoming part of the overall game in the Middle East, not out of it, but in it. So you have the overall picture here. And I think it's a big one. And of course, remember that all this is happening when Iran is burning again. The streets of Iran are burning again in protest. Trump and Netanyahu yesterday in public talked again about Iran in the old terms which preceded what happened in July. Trump in particular. The American representative in the Security Council of the UN basically brushed aside all the condemnations of Israel. Tammy Bruce, the deputy ambassador, representative. So whether America officially or formally does recognize this or not, in actual terms, they are behind Israel. And remember again that Trump just a few weeks ago said what he said about Somalia and what he thinks about Somalia as a failing state, and used all kinds of language, and words which we should not even repeat here. So I think that obviously there can be a military action by God knows what coalition of countries against Somaliland, like it existed against the Kurds in Iraq after the referendum. I doubt it. So it remains to be seen what else. How will the Israelis develop this formal recognition into actual relationships. And I have some ideas about it. But I leave it.
Brilliant. Joseph, let me very quickly give our viewers a little bit of the history and correct me if I get anything wrong. Okay. S- Somalia was a British protectorate.
And
And
Italian, British
no,
Italian.
Somalia was British protectorate,
Yeah.
and Somaliland was Italian.
No, it was the
And
other way around. Somaliland was British, Somalia was Italian.
oh, okay. So I'm getting my facts
No,
mixed
but
up.
look, but I don't think that's really. I don't want to dispute
Yeah,
what you say, but I don't think that's the main issue here. Is not that because there is a problem here. Let's be honest about it. And the Israelis did take a risk here because almost every country in Africa can be split according to ethnic tribal lines, and you don't like to create this precedent.
no,
So
exactly. But let me
whether
very
it was
quickly.
this or
So
that part of
it,
Somalia, it was divided.
it was divided, and they were merged in 1960 to form the Somali Republic.
Yeah,
Okay, so I stand corrected. And it was divided between the Italians and the British in 1960. It forms the Somali Republic, and uh, Siad Barre, the military dictator, is overthrown in 1991. And once he's overthrown in 1991, then 30 years ago, the Somaliland folks declare independence. So they've declared independence 30 years ago. Somaliland is dominated by the Isa clan,
yeah,
which matters a lot because they are a different ethnicity to
yeah,
Somalia. Somalia has been racked by and dominated
yeah.
by Islamist militants. Therefore, a lot of people have argued, especially those from Somaliland, that they must have the right of self determination. Clashing with that principle is the principle of territorial and national sovereignty. As you said, if we allow formation of succession of tribal
Yeah.
regions, then Africa will be, African states
Yeah,
will
but
just.
allow me, if I may, to interrupt you here
Yeah,
for the sake of the discussion. The
yeah,
African Union already condemned what the Israelis did, but it was almost like generic ritualistic statement.
yeah.
I'm not aware of any African country which is on good terms with Israel, and there are quite a few of them
Yeah,
that has
they,
drew
they
any.
view Israel. Many of them view Israel as an apartheid state.
No,
Yeah,
no, 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 no. 1 second, but not the African countries. In the West they do it, but not Ethiopia, not Kenya, not so many
I agree.
others. Not
No,
Zambia, not
absolutely.
many others. They,
Yeah, not
yeah, they haven't
yeah.
really said anything specific about the
Yeah.
relationship with Israel as a result of all that.
But
They're
you see,
really very almost
I,
passive.
yeah, but the African Union fears that recognizing
Yeah,
Somaliland could set off a chain reaction,
yeah,
and we have Israel. Israel's move has been criticized by many countries: Egypt, Turkey, Saudi Arabia, Yemen, Sudan,
yeah.
Nigeria, Libya,
But
Iran,
for example,
Iraq,
but
and
not Rome
Qatar.
Sudan, but not South Sudan.
Exactly. Now again, that you're raising very important issues here.
Yeah,
So all these countries have criticized. It. Now the geopolitics. You mentioned the UAE has relations. Our viewers should know that the UAE operates a military port in Somaliland. So in a way, when it comes to de facto relationships, UAE is ahead of Israel. Number two, last year, I believe it was last year, correct me if I'm wrong, Somaliland agreed to lease part of its coastline to landlocked Ethiopia. This is super important because Ethiopia, as you said, is a growing power. It has a lot of ambition. It
and
is building a huge dam on the Nile, which is causing
and
the Egyptians.
this dam may, hopefully not, may become a casus belli with Egypt. So
Hmm,
you can understand why the Egyptians look. What you do now, Atul, is you basically explain in a very simple way that how it is all divided, and
yeah,
it makes sense from an Israeli perspective or not, but it is not something out of the blue that people say, "What are you doing? What
yeah,
is this madness?" It is not madness. It
yeah.
has geopolitical roots and good
Yeah.
solid ones.
Yeah, I mean, it is about command of the Straits of Hormuz, as you said, the Red Sea region, the Horn of Africa. And Somaliland is a breakaway semi desert territory on the west of the Gulf of Aden.
Yeah,
And so, geopolitically, geographically, militarily, it is of extraordinary strategic significance. So, so much so for the facts. Now, the reality is, Joseph, that a lot of these states in Africa are colonial accidents.
yeah, yeah,
They don't make sense.
yeah, yeah.
You're talking about Yemen, which officially is one country, but de facto we know it's been in civil war ever since
Exactly.
we go back. So,
And there are rumors and even strong speculation that South Yemen is
mm,
about to declare also something similar to Somaliland, and with the support, tacit or otherwise, of
mhm,
UAE. So
good. So,
again,
so my question to you is: so far, post 1945, the U.S. has kept the lid on all these secessionist movements to some degree because um, the belief is let sleeping dogs lie. We believe in the principle of state sovereignty. The United Nations rests on that principle. But there has always been a tension with the principle of self determination. Are we now going to see a breakup of a number of states? We've seen that in Sudan. Sudan and South Sudan. Now, Sudan is in civil war with a lot of external actors involved, including, for instance, UAE. Libya is in a state of savage civil war. So, are we now living in a new era?
Libya is also divided actually in actual terms between the West and the East. I mean,
Yes.
there are two governments, and
Yes.
whether people recognize this or that government is immaterial. On the ground, you have a division of power. I mean, that's what
Exactly.
happens. And by the
Exactly.
way, they talk about the West Sudan being separated from the rest of Sudan as a result of what is happening in Sudan. Again, I don't think that. By the way, another development that you may have skipped is that Kabylians, the Berbers in Algeria,
Mhm.
declared their own so-called independence. Of course, it doesn't mean anything because they did it outside of the Algeria.
Yeah.
But don't forget, maybe 30-40% of the population of Algeria are Berbers.
Yeah.
And so, look, the Amazigh
And,
people.
and, and let's go to Israel's neighbor, Syria, de
Yeah.
facto
Okay, yeah.
divided into spheres of influence. You have
and as
MIT
and even though the
versus Mossad.
American media doesn't talk about that, in the last few days there have been a real fighting between the
Yeah.
Alawis and the regime, which, by the way, is just the beginning. And look, obviously that happens in Syria is just the aperitif.
Mhm.
It's just the beginning.
Yeah.
You will see much more of it. And never mind how Ashara is looking in the eyes of Trump as a nice, charming
Mhm.
guy. You see the videos coming
With
out.
wonderful skin, Joseph. Don't forget.
Yeah.
Wonderful skin. And
Oh
he
yeah.
now has nice perfume too. The Trump perfume.
I'm trying to spare the audience from this type of comments. But you see, when you look at the videos coming out of Tartus and Latakia in Syria in the last 72 hours, you know exactly what is going to happen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So my broader question stands then. Are we going to go through a period? We went through a period where state sovereignty was sacrosanct. Are we now going to go through a period wherein borders are now up for grabs again, just as old times?
Not necessarily, because it depends on the case. You
Mhm.
look at Ethiopia, for example, the Tigrayans were prevented from seceding. There's
Mhm.
a strong central government, after all,
Yeah.
in Ethiopia. You look at Nigeria, already in the late 60s, the Igbos, Biafra was prevented from,
Yeah.
but you have now a civil war basically in Nigeria between Christians and
Between,
Muslims.
yeah,
North,
especially north. North
exactly,
is completely lawless.
north and south in a way. So that depends on the particular case. And in the case of Somalia, you know, Somaliland is really an interesting place. I mean, there have been elections there. There was a peaceful transfer of powers in more than one time. And where do you have it in a lot of those countries? I mean, let's be honest about that.
So,
Definitely not in Somalia.
so if that is the case, let's say you say it'll be case by case, and the governments that are strong will be able to retain their territory, and those that are weak will lose theirs.
There
So
might, yeah, yeah,
they might. My
yeah.
question is, this is different, and following on from that, why did it take so long for Israel and others to recognize Somaliland? Why hasn't the US joined in yet?
I don't know about the US. I can tell you about Israel that if I understand correctly, Israel started in the last few years secret relations with Somaliland
Hmm.
throughout. Basically, Mossad was behind that because, Mossad is the foreign ministry of
Yeah,
Israel to countries that do not have formal relations. So
yeah.
that
Arguably the best intelligence agency in the world.
well, you said so. You said so. Who am I to refute what you say? But look, in the case of Israel, call it the implication of the 7th of October. I think that, and it remind me, allow me to come back to what I said before, but maybe to develop it a little bit. Uh, until 2023, what happened? Netanyahu's strategy, and I have to say Netanyahu because he was there for 16 or so years. I mean, it's almost like a generation. Netanyahu's strategy was passivity. Let's not get into unnecessary conflict, particularly if they could develop into a full scale military clash. And let's buy time because we make better use of the time than the other side. In a way, it was correct up to the point that it proved so wrong because the other side decided to break the status quo and did what they did on the 7th of October. So I think that now you can see a reversal of the entire line of thinking from passivity to activity, from containment. It was, the strategy basically to active Israeli actions, as you see, by the way, you see in Syria. As we just mentioned, Syria, don't forget that in
I mean,
South
look,
Syria, the Druze minority in South Syria publicly say we want to be with Israel. Whether
yes.
they mean it or not, whether it will stay like that, but that's what they say. So,
Our viewers should know two facts.
yeah,
One, that Israel destroyed the entire Syrian Air Force in one of the most successful operations
not just
ever.
Air Force, the entire Syrian army, basically, Navy
Okay,
as well. Yeah,
exactly. Army and Navy as well. So that was a phenomenal military operations. And
yeah.
number two, that Israel now commands the Golan Heights, for which it fought many wars in the past. Literally,
Basically, the Israelis are saying South Syria is our zone of influence,
yeah.
and that brings it again to what we discussed before about Turkey. So, look, all
So
this.
one more thing our viewers should know when we are discussing Turkey. Right now, what is happening in Syria is a new form of the Great Game. The Great Game was played in Afghanistan between British and Soviet intelligence. Today in Syria, MIT, which is Turkey's secret service, and Mossad are having a go at each other for influence and command of the region.
They're going at each other, and they're going at each other. They will go at each other also in Somaliland and in the Mediterranean, in Cyprus and Greece. And don't forget also that Israel is having very good relationships with some of the Balkan states, Bulgaria, Serbia, even Albania. You'll be surprised. Prime Minister of Albania is a great supporter of Israel. Kosovo as well. So look what happens here. As you mentioned, Turkey. Erdogan, in the beginning of his term, he developed the concept of no enemies, no enmities to Turkey. Turkey is friendly with everybody around. It came to the point now where Turkey is becoming isolated. It has bad relations with the Balkan states. It is having, as you know, very bad relations and current with Greece and Cyprus. It has a problem still with the Kurdish people in Syria and Iraq, even though the PKK in Turkey itself supposedly is in a ceasefire or whatever. And they have a problem with Israel, which they never had before. And if you want me to develop this point furthermore, it's very interesting.
Please go on.
It's very interesting. Two countries now are leading the anti Israel chart in the Middle East. Who are they? Iran, the Shia leader, Turkey wants to be the Sunni leader. And the two of them are not Arab states. They have nothing to do with borders with Israel. They've never had any direct conflict with Israel. So their conflict now with Israel is all about religion. And instead of uniting the entire Muslim world around them, they split it because a lot of the Muslim countries of the Middle East do not want to get into this holy war because they see it as a danger to
I think
themselves.
there is another factor, Joseph, which you haven't mentioned and we must mention here. And that is both these countries are former imperial powers. The Persian Empire and the Ottoman Empire
Okay,
dominated
yeah.
that region. And a lot of
Yeah,
that,
but
hear
then
me out,
again, what do they have to do with
hear me,
Israel and the
hear me out,
Jews?
hear me out,
Nothing.
hear me out. And a lot of the Arab states do not want a return of that domination. Many
Exactly.
geopolitical thinkers believe that Turkey and Iran are using Israel as a convenient tool to rally public support behind their
Well,
cause.
that exactly brings me to the point that I raised, and we tie the knots here. Israel is becoming an actor within the system of Middle East politics, not outside
Yeah.
of it. It is becoming a legitimate partner to some countries as opposed to others, of course. But it is a legitimate partner now. By the way, today, and it is very significant that Etihad Airways are enlarging their operations with Israel to 6 flights daily, UAE. And by the way, also
Mhm.
Air India announced that they are going to resume flights to Israel. That's for you, Atul. So what you see happening really
Well,
is
I'll be flying from the US, so I think I'm more interested in the American flights right now.
okay. UAE, by the way, did not deny that they had a huge arms deal with Israel worth over $2 billion. Morocco doesn't deny the diversity of relationships with Israel. So
I mean,
what you
look, as I hear rumors that Mohammed bin Salman's security is basically provided by Israelis today because he cannot trust his own clan after the shakedown
there
at the
are all
Ritz
kinds of
Carlton.
rumors, and there have been rumors for many years about who really were the doctors of Saudi kings. But let's leave these ones aside. Rumors, they are rumors.
Okay, fine. But the point
Atul, you
stands.
know Arabic because in Arabic there is a word muamara.
I,
Muamara means a conspiracy. Everything is a conspiracy. Well,
true.
what we have discussed until now in this particular discussion, Atul, of course, because of your great conduct of the discussion, is nothing is conspiratorial here. Everything that
Mhm.
we discussed makes sense strategically and geopolitically
Yeah,
and logically. To
yeah,
the point where you ask me, so why didn't they recognize Somaliland before? I tried to explain to him by saying, look, Israel was very passive.
yeah.
And
So
now
it's
Israel
moved from passive to
is
active,
going
and
to the other pole. Now,
mhm,
the danger, by the way, the danger, when you look at it in that sense, is that you don't jump from one extreme to the other. There's always to be.
overextension is always a big danger, and Israel
Exactly.
is a small state.
Exactly. So you have always to be able to maintain a sense of realism, realistic approach to all that. And it is always a danger in the doorstep of the Israelis because the sense is Iran regime is on the verge of collapse. Yemen is Yemen. In Lebanon, Hezbollah is under domestic pressure. Forget about what the Israelis are planning to do there or not with the American support or so. Syria is in turmoil still, despite all that people say. And therefore, Israel is almost in a position like they can do whatever they want. No, they can't. And now I say to you, I would say to the Israelis, do not overextend, do not overjump yourselves. Look behind the shoulders in a very realistic way as to what can be achieved, what is attainable, cost benefit, and all that comes with it. But a point here that I need to make to you, I don't know when was the last time that you interviewed, say, people that would talk to you about Arab social media. It's a great subject. Why? Because when you look at Arab social media, you see something very interesting. You can see on many issues a lot of people with their names, with pictures attached, tell you, but the Israelis are okay. They do this, they do that. What do you want from them? So you see that it is starting to filter through the realization, look, something was supposed to happen, didn't happen. The Israelis yet again are like the phoenix coming out of the sand, and they are in a very dominant position. And this is a danger for the Israelis. Don't get complacent. Don't lose sight of realities. Don't jump overboard.
I mean, look, a number of people, including many Israeli thinkers, have mentioned that Israel always faces a wall or a sea of hostility from a number of Arab populations. The Arab street is quite motivated against Israel. Now, the Arab palace may not be, but the Arab street is. And should a unifying figure emerge like Gamal Abdel Nasser, or,
Yeah, but
at
that's
that time, he was incompetent, but he was
yeah,
a great
much
democrat.
less. Look, the Arab Street, yes, but less than that's what I said just before. But look at Lebanon, for example.
Yeah.
Today, you have in Lebanon, day in, day out, night in, night out, on channels of radio, television, in the press, so many people who come out publicly and say, we want peace with Israel. Enough is enough. We want peace with Israel. We are not going to look down again at the destruction of our country because it serves the ethnic, tribalistic, communal interest of the Shias and therefore of Iran. So, there are various forces at play.
Understood. Now, you've mentioned, we've talked about Syria, we've talked about South Yemen breaking apart. Could Lebanon break apart as well? Because it is it is it's like Swiss cheese with lots of holes in it.
Lebanon, look, to all intents and purposes, it's already broken up many years ago. I mean, look, you really believe that the Lebanese government is real full control in the south? No, it doesn't. Do you
No.
really believe that they have real control in areas of the north where the Lebanese forces of Samir Jaja are so strong in all this? Do they really have full control over every neighborhood of Beirut? Not really. I mean, and so on and so forth. But the Lebanese do not want to break up. They do not want to break up. You know why? Because they know what the price they paid in the civil wars. They are afraid of it. There was a book that I wrote a critique of that was published way back by a Lebanese scholar who is now in Qatar, I believe, one of those universities. I'm not sure Qatar or any other of those Gulf states. And he had a field research in Lebanon. And what he found out was the Lebanese always talk about the Lebanese civil war that was and the one that is going to happen. And look, this is frightening. This is scary. And that's why people leave. That's why the sense is that everything really depends on what is going to happen because of the connection between factions in Lebanon and outside countries. So what about ourselves, deciding for ourselves? More and more Lebanese saying, look, exactly because we are so fragile, we don't want it to happen. We are afraid of the results. And the pressure, therefore, is on Hezbollah. I just saw
Brilliant.
2 days ago or so, again, and you have to be careful about whatever, but record of a discussion with a former Hezbollah fighter who basically said, look, we understand now how we were cheated by our leaders who told us that we can stand up to Israel. What are you talking about? We were crushed in the war. And if there is another round of hostilities, they will destroy us completely. It's about time to stop all that and so on and so forth. You hear much, much, much more of it in Lebanon, as you asked about Lebanon.
All right. So, in a nutshell, what Somaliland represents is a more active Israeli foreign policy. Israel is not on the fringes. Israel is now in the center of action. And
Entering into being a part of Middle East politics.
it's now a part of Middle East politics. It seems that Israel has closer and closer links with the UAE, perhaps some sort of informal alliance as well.
Yeah, I would call it informal. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
And what Israeli recognition of Somaliland proves is that Israel now has a major lever against Turkey, which has been acting against
And
Israel.
of course, against Iran.
Yeah, and against Iran, of course, the Houthis, against the Houthis.
Yeah, the closeness to Iran, I mean, the
Yeah.
range to Iran is shortened. And without getting into details, you and me can imagine what will be the next step of the Israeli connection with Somaliland.
A military port, perhaps.
I don't know. That's what you said. Maybe. Who knows?
A
It
missile
makes
base,
sense.
perhaps, an air
I
force
see. Look,
base.
it makes sense.
Okay, good. So, on the whole, a momentous decision with far-reaching consequences for the region, the Red Sea region, the Horn of Africa, and indeed the Arabian Peninsula. So, on the whole, it's something that will have major reverberations through the pages of history.
Wait. Look, that's, as I said before, not jump overboard, not be complacent as Israelis, history is, how do you know something is historical? Retrospectively, not when it happens. When it happens, you can speculate about it.
We are
It is all,
speculating.
yeah, it is all fragile. It is all the Middle East, and we still have America and the role that America plays with a, how to call him, a whimsical president. You never know what can happen. The possibility that Israel under Netanyahu will make mistakes of going overboard. Look, all this has to be taken into account. Erdogan is not necessarily the most predictable leader as well. What will be the reaction in Iran to the growing protests in the streets? What will the regime understand that they should do in order to divert attention from that? So a lot of variables are still very fluid, very fluid. So I would say momentous event with potentially crucial implications. Let's
Not
wait and see.
historic yet.
Let's wait and see for our next discussion.
Brilliant. Joseph Olmert, thank you very much for your
My
time. This
pleasure always.
this
My
is
pleasure
the
always.
last discussion we are recording in 2025.
Yeah.
And it's a great honor to record the last discussion for Fair Observer with you in this year.
My honor. It's always my honor, Atul, and all your viewers and readers and all your staff. Send my regard to Roberta and to everybody else. Take
Brilliant.
care.
I will. And Happy New Year to you
You
and
too.
your family.
You too. Thank you. Bye.
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 Join the conversation at Fair Observer and subscribe to our YouTube channel.